All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Gallegos, Chairwoman of the Saginaw County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. And I want to welcome everyone back to the Perc Breakfast, the Zoom version. Before we get started, I want to share some logistics for today's program that will enhance your viewing pleasure. We recommend you view this Perc in speaker mode to get the best flow and the least distraction. During the program, we will be muting everyone except the designated speaker. But don't worry, this is a Perc. So we built in some time for Zooming business card exchange about halfway through the program. There will be a video in today's program, so we'll share our screen sound to allow you to hear it. Please be aware you may need to adjust the volume on your device to a comfortable level. And now, let's begin our program with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. You should have received our Perc brochure as an attachment to your Perc confirmation email. In it, you'll find information on today's new members. There were also several PDF attachments with information from today's premier Perc and speaker sponsors. We encourage you to review the materials and support your fellow chamber members with business whenever possible. The Chamber offers a variety of tools for you to use as you work to increase your business connections and bottom line. The Perc brochure is one of those tools. A variety of Chamber benefits are another. Chamber benefit partners provide comprehensive benefit programs for members of the Saginaw County Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber endorses their products and services, and they help support the Chamber's quality of life, community initiatives, and member service programs. Because you belong, these value-added benefits can save you time and money. Each month, we try to share one of our member benefits with you at Perc to make sure you have the information you need to take full advantage of your membership. This month's highlighted member benefit is Identity Force. Everybody knows that identity theft is a serious and escalating problem for employers and employees that can result in huge financial losses, lost productivity at work, and extreme personal stress. As a result, identity theft protection services have quickly become a highly valued employee benefit. The Saginaw Chamber has partnered with the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and Identity Force, the industry-leading provider of identity theft protection services, to deliver the highest quality and most cost-effective solution for employers. Plans start at under $3 per employee per month, with a minimum of 10 enrollments. Learn more about Identity Force and other member benefits on the Chamber's website at www.saginawchamber.org. And now, please join me in welcoming your 2020 Chief Ambassador Chair, Dawn Boucher from Manor Group.
Good morning, everyone, and a special welcome to all of our newest Chamber members today. We are so happy you could join us. With the uncertainty of the economy during an unprecedented pandemic, it's especially important to support each other and lift up our local business community. Partnering with the Chamber is a great way to do just that. Membership gives you access to local support network of information, best practices, new business leads, communication, and connection opportunities. That's why we are so happy to introduce today's newest Chamber members. First up this morning is Applied Imaging. Applied Imaging is Michigan's premier office technology solutions provider. They are dedicated to providing clients with the best products, service, and support. Applied Imaging looks forward to developing a completely customized solution to fit your document and information technology needs. Welcome to the Chamber. Next, we have DuPont Healthcare Industries Materials Site. DuPont Healthcare Industries Materials Site is dedicated to supplying products to the healthcare industry. These products are used by customers around the world to manufacture a wide variety of healthcare products, including pharmaceutical tubing, pacemaker leads, drug delivery patches such as nicotine patches, home diagnostic kits for renal patients, anti-gas antifoams, and other pharmaceutical products. Welcome to the Chamber. And our final member this morning is Open Arms Daycare of Saginaw. Open Arms Daycare opened in June of 2013 and is committed to providing a safe, caring, and academic environment for children aged newborn to 12 years. The family-owned daycare is dedicated to creating an environment that will nurture the inherent curiosity of children with opportunities to explore their environment while preparing them for the world around them. Welcome to the Chamber. And now, Heather, it's back to you.
Thanks so much, Dawn. At this time, I'd like to thank our 2020 Premier Perc sponsors, the organizations that make the Percolator Breakfast possible by underwriting all 10 of our events during the year. All of our 2020 Premier Perc sponsors are included on your screen and in your Perc brochure. We encourage you to thank them for sponsoring the Percolator Breakfast and support them with your business whenever possible. At each Perc, we like to highlight a few of these exceptional sponsors and tell you a little bit about them, and I'd like to do that right now. First up, Central Michigan University. Central Michigan University is an innovator and leader in quality programs for adult learners, offers bachelor, master's, and doctoral programs tailored to the unique needs of working students. CMU online programs are offered to Great Lakes Bay Area students with support from the staff at their local Saginaw Center. Thank you, Central Michigan University. And next, we welcome Dale Carnegie Training. At Dale Carnegie, they draw out the natural strengths of everyone on your team, building courage and confidence that invigorates your employees to elicit the best your team has to offer. They show you and your employees how to excel by gaining the trust and the respect of the people around you, creating a culture that embraces everyone's ideas and working together to make things happen. For more than 100 years, Dale Carnegie has helped leaders and their teams rise to the occasion by inspiring relationships that drive progress. They've helped millions of people make their mark on the world by changing the way they interact with it through nationally accredited, open enrollment, public programs, and tailored company-specific programs. Transformation starts here. Take command and talk to Dale Carnegie team today. Thank you, Dale Carnegie Training. Next up, we welcome Isabella Bank. Since 1903, Isabella Bank has called the heart of Michigan home. When you bank with Isabella, your money stays here, doing good things in our community every day. At Isabella Bank, they care about our community because this is their home too. Bank local, bank anywhere, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Thank you, Isabella Bank. And next we welcome Raymond. Raymond is the momentum behind what's possible. They focus on the business of business, allowing you to focus on what makes you extraordinary. They bring assurance to match your passion and energize your purpose. Ultra dynamic yet focused, changing at goals for companies and individuals that are shaping our world and building our community every day. Thank you, Raymond. And now please welcome Saginaw Bay Underwriters. Want results beyond insurance? At Saginaw Bay Underwriters, their advisors use proprietary three-step approach called the Clear Advantage to provide businesses more than just a policy and far more than what you've come to expect from other insurance agencies. To discover the Clear Advantage for all your insurance decisions, contact Saginaw Bay Underwriters today. Thank you, Saginaw Bay Underwriters. And our final premier perk sponsor this morning is ServPro of Saginaw. ServPro of Saginaw specializes in the restoration of fire, smoke, water, and mold damages at the residential, commercial, or insurance level. Their services include dehumidification, mold remediation, deodorization, document drawing, move-outs, content restoration, and reconstruction. ServPro cleans carpets, hard floors, air ducts, and biohazard crime scenes. ServPro's goal is to make you feel like it never even happened. Thank you, ServPro of Saginaw. And now it's time for today's community update with your chamber president and mine, Rebekah Hornak. Veronica, it's all yours.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you to all of our PERC highlighted sponsors today. I was looking at the chat room. We've got a lot of people weighing in, and just welcome to our new members, our PERC sponsors. We have so appreciate you. And now for the community update. As the COVID pandemic continues to play havoc in our in-person events, I just want to announce that we will be holding the volunteer acknowledgements and tributes that we normally do at our annual meeting. We're going to hold those at next month's September Percolator breakfast. So while we won't have a formal 2020 annual meeting this year, we'll be mailing each of you our annual report so you have information on all of the Chamber's accomplishments from 2019. Remember 2019? The new good old days. Anyway, once larger events are allowed again, you can be sure that we'll be back together in person. Until then, we hope you'll continue to join us for our virtual PERC, big strategies for small business, and our legislative events through your favorite communication devices. And just so that you know, we also have the Regional Chamber Summit coming up that has been confirmed. It will be in October, and we're proud to announce that we will have Frank Luntz, a national figure, regular on Fox Network, as our keynote speaker. So we're really excited about that. So watch for more information. Through this, while we're not face-to-face, just know that the Chamber and our staff, we are still working on communicate, connect, and influence. One of those areas is on legislation that we're supporting strongly, and its intent is to protect you, our small businesses, our businesses, from liability from opportunistic COVID lawsuits. As you're trying to reopen safely and someone contracts COVID and they happen to be in your place of business, it's going to protect those businesses from a frivolous lawsuit. So we're fighting that on both the federal and state levels to be included in legislative priorities and enacted into law. And we'll certainly keep you informed about that progress. We're also trying to work with our legislators as much as possible on the budget. We've got some huge gaps for this year and into next. So we're working alongside of them, trying to underscore the priorities for the state. So just watch for our legislative update, look for our, at a glance, all of our publications that we're sending out to you on a regular basis, along with business resources that you can use. And now, in recognition of Small Business Month, which was back in May, when we were all learning how to work from home, we'd like to honor the Chamber's small business sponsors. When we met in person, you probably saw them listed on banners at all of our perks, and you should be able to see all of them now listed on your screen. I'd like to take a minute to introduce them to you and to thank those who could attend today's perk for joining us. Arner Investment Management, RWS Financial Group, Best Towing and Best Recovery Services, Birmingham Investments and Management Incorporated, the Children's Grief Center of the Great Lakes Bay Region, Deno's Furniture and Bedding, Easy Pro Delivery Incorporated, and Larkin's Dry Ice. Fearless Networking, the Garfield Group, Great Lakes Safety Training Center, Massoud Labor Law Group, Merrill, Michigan Pipe and Valve, Saginaw Incorporated, the Mustard Seed, Paint Bull, Reimold Printing Corporation, Roberts, Beeler and Fisher PC, the Wirt Rivette Group, and Valley United Insurance Agency. I want to thank all small business sponsors and acknowledge all of the Chamber's small business members with a brief moment of virtual applause.
So to start, I'd like to welcome Dr. Kathy Stewart.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate the invitation to join you this morning. Little did I know that when I announced my intent to retire in January, that things would go awry in education in March. But to begin with, thanking our first responders. They put their life on the line each and every day during this pandemic. I would also like to send warm thoughts and wishes to all those that have been impacted by COVID directly, whether they've experienced it personally or have had a family member or close friend experience COVID. There's so much unknown. I just appreciate the scientists that are working so hard to try and solve this so we can get back to some sense of normal sooner or later. I'd like to move on to Friday the 13th, March 13th. It was an evening on March 12th, Thursday, about 11 p.m. Educators were online listening to Governor Whitmer announce that our schools would be closing at the end of the day on Friday the 13th. Now, granted, if you look back at the lunar phases, I'm willing to bet that was a full moon part of the month too. And we educators, we've always experienced the up and down of lunar phases with kids in our classrooms, but who would have known? With the small amount of COVID we had in our state, I was hoping we would get to spring break week at least to get to April. But unfortunately, it was mid-March and schools closed. I recall speaking with Matt Carey that afternoon, talking about hearing the voices of students in the hallway, talking to students. They were kind of excited about this early break. And Matt Carey said to me, you know, Kathy, this is probably the last day in your career you'll spend with students in school. And boy, was he right about that, fortunately. However, our districts were quick to respond. We sent students home, we formed response teams, and then we were off and running. The first thing we were thinking about was meeting the basic needs of our students. Saginaw County has almost 60% of its students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. We know that if basic needs aren't met, that student health and mental well-being is at risk. Our schools ramped up meal distribution programs for breakfast and lunch and even over weekends so that students and their families had access to food. There were many challenges with this meal distribution. Some caretakers couldn't get out to pick up meals, so educators actually delivered food to students as much as they could. It was in mid to late May that Saginaw County, Saginaw school districts reached the 1 million meal distribution mark. We're very proud of these essential workers that work tirelessly and are still continuing to distribute meals across the summer. Nutrition is very important to the health of student brains and their ability to even have fun and work and play. So we thank our nutritional services staff for their dedicated service during this time. After meals, we went to really taking a look at how do we connect with students and families. Our educators flipped their classrooms. They went into an electronic instruction mode. Teachers created packets. They distributed them by mail. They distributed them for pickup. They distributed them home to home. We did find quickly, we have internet deserts in our county. Saginaw County has some very rural areas and even urban areas that still lack strong, reliable internet connections. Some of our school districts went so far as to add more wireless connections in their close to their school parking lots for those families that could drive in and have their students access on computers in the school parking lots. There were a lot of questions about grading, pass, fail. We had a lot of discussions over how do we, students that were passing or failing on March 13th, how do we end their school year for them as a pass or fail? Our superintendents were meeting almost monthly. We were collaborating and discussing, making decisions together, advising one another, and really working together collaboratively because this was all unknown territory for all of us at this time. And then, of course, decisions. Sports seasons were canceled. What do we do for our spring athletes? Spring musicals and plays, debate clubs, every student activity was canceled. And that's hard because a lot of kids invest so much time into those areas, and just to stop on March 13th, it was a hard stop. Celebration events, graduations, proms. You may have seen buses driving around the county. They were either delivering meals, they were delivering packets, or they were delivering certificates of accomplishments. We went so far as to our turnaround student awards. We visited families in areas to present students with that recognition. A lot of questions on essential workers, who at school were really identified as essential workers, who should be reporting, who could work from home. And then wages was a big question too. There were a lot of unknowns about would we receive full state aid from Michigan? Would we receive our federal funds for those programs that are funded by federal revenues? So there were a lot of decisions to navigate, but I'm very proud of the way the superintendents came together and our response teams in each district came together to take a look at how to navigate this season of the pandemic. And finally, I would just like to thank the Chamber for all their support during my tenure with Saginaw ISD, the Chamber's interest in learning more about the intermediate school district and the vast array of services we provide across the county to each corner of the county, and also for your strong support for career technical education and the Marshall Plan for Talent. Together, we work tirelessly, and opportunities for kids, there's no limit now because of your support. Thank you very much. We'll have forever, I will be forever grateful for all of that support and that work together. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Scott Sawyer. He's going to give us a lesson on school finance and how that looks in the future. Couldn't have a better person telling us about that.
Thanks, Kathy. I want to thank everybody for giving an old bean counter here an opportunity to tell you about school finance. I know there's some tax accountants in here, so I'm grateful that they'll enjoy what I have to say. The rest of you, just if you're going to yawn, turn off your cameras. To tell you where we're going with finance, I guess we have to talk about where we start with finance. So just a brief bit about how our 12 local school districts in Saginaw County are funded. for fiscal 20, the 1920 school year that just finished, the minimum state aid is $8,111 per student. And you hear that number an awful lot, the per pupil foundation, state aid. But that doesn't all come from the state. A lot of that comes from in fact, you folks on this presentation here, because this includes the 18 mills non-homestead levy. So each school district has to levy their 18 mills non-homestead that was put in place under Prop A back in the mid-90s. And so I just threw in this slide a couple of examples from around the county. So Saginaw Public Schools, they get $8,100, $8,111 from this foundation. But their local property tax, that 18 mills that's levied, actually makes up almost $1,700 per student. So the state's really only paying $64.30 to Saginaw Public. And then you see Saginaw Township is pretty similar. But then you look at a district like Carleton with a smaller tax base, to get that 8111 from the state's putting in 7877. So those are just a couple examples. I won't belabor the point, but the state's not really putting that 8111 forward. A good chunk of that comes from the local businesses and the taxes on what we call non-homestead. That's businesses, second homes, some commercial property at six mills. But that kind of gives you the outlay here. The state side, so after you take out the local property tax, this is where the state tax comes from. This is from fiscal 19. It's the last state fiscal year that has concluded. You see the majority of the school aid fund, that SAF, the revenue comes from sales tax, 44%. Another big chunk of income tax, 21%. The state education property tax, that everybody pays on their property, that 6 mills, makes up about 15.6% of the overall revenue. And then you can see, sometimes we hear how much the lottery funds schools. You see it's a very small part of our pie at 8%. But that's sort of the makeup of where the state gets their money. And you can see how there's going to be some challenges for both fiscal 20 and fiscal 21 with sales tax and income tax as this COVID crisis has hit. So just a little bit of information. The school fiscal year runs like the school year, July 1 through June 30th, but the state's fiscal year runs October 1 through September 30th. So that's what creates some of the problems, where the state has still been talking about their fiscal 20, even though schools at this point in time have been done with fiscal 20 for a month, and we're a month into our fiscal 21. So the state budget process goes, usually starts in January. There's a consensus revenue estimating conference where the executive in both houses put forward what they sort of think the revenue looks like. They look at all kinds of factors, and they put forward their final fiscal 19, their updated fiscal 20, and their initial fiscal 21 projections on revenue. And that kicks off the process. Next, sometime in January, or more typically in February, the governor presents her proposed budget, and then that starts the negotiations. So over the next several months, March to June, the House, the Senate, the governors, their proposals all go through negotiations. Obviously, that was a little different this year because all of those branches of our government were pretty focused on COVID. And then by the time we get to May, there's an additional consensus revenue estimating conference where they update their fiscal 20 and their fiscal 21 projections, and then really finalize the budget. Their constitutional deadline for finalizing a budget, though, is September 30th. We had about 8 solid years under Governor Snyder where the budget was pretty well done and negotiated by June 30th. But for those of us who've been in the school finance game prior to that and since, we see that's not the case. We didn't have our state budget last year until September 30th, and that was without COVID. So for schools that, both the ISD and our 12 locals, that presents a number of problems that by the time September 30th runs around, they're a full quarter through their fiscal year without knowing what their finances are. So looking at where we are, for revenue based on the May revenue estimating conference, they figured that fiscal 19 ended at about 13.5 billion. 13,552. It's in millions. That's a static figure. That's where fiscal 19 ended, and that's sort of our starting point. This is just the school aid fund side. General fund has its own problems, but you can see based on the May revenue estimating conference, we're looking at a decrease in revenue for fiscal 20 and fiscal 21, and then in fiscal 22 finally catching up to where we ended in fiscal 19. So it creates a budget deficit for fiscal 20 that we've already wrapped for the 19-20 school year of over $1 billion, and about another $1 billion in fiscal 21, and still a third of $1 billion, or $334 million in fiscal 22. This is the fiscal cliff everybody's been talking about for schools. So it kind of comes down to what's the state going to do, and I'll just throw another couple numbers out there because I can see everybody's very interested in the numbers. That's just the school aid fund. The general fund for fiscal 20 is $2.1 billion in the hole. So coupled with the school aid fund, the state's $3 billion behind for the year that's just completed. It's still at $2.2 billion combined general fund school aid fund for the state for fiscal 21, and still at $1.4 billion for fiscal 22. So over the course of these 3 years, the state is down $6.6 billion in revenue from fiscal 19. So that's not even including the economic growth that we would have expected. So for fiscal 20, we finally got our answer about a week ago. The state is going to fill in the school aid fund with the corona relief funds that they had, essentially exhausting all of that COVID CARES Act dollars to fill the gap. For general fund as well, they filled the gap through a couple executive orders and cut in spending, but it just means we have to address the fiscal 21 problem now. It means we're good for the school year that already finished, but for those of us starting school in the next couple weeks, we don't yet know what our budget is. The state's been very quiet. We know their deadline's September 30th, but our budgets began July 1. There is going to be an August consensus revenue estimating conference. The state always has the authority to call additional revenue estimating conferences. I've been doing this since 2005, and we haven't had one called. It was announced yesterday afternoon that will be August 24th, and it'll give the state an opportunity to revise those revenue estimates that we just went through. So we're hoping that we're going to see a better economic outlook on August 24th. But as is, we'd be looking at a $663 per student cut to fill that $963 million deficit presented back in May. That's an 8% cut for our local school districts. It's astronomical, especially as we're expecting, and you'll hear from Rebekah, some of the changes that we have to make in order to accommodate COVID with PPE and those additional costs. In addition to that, the state sets a cap for our insurance costs, and the state increased that by 3.3%. The state dictates our pension costs, and the state dictated that at a 7% increase for next year. And then, of course, we have inflation is low. You guys are all familiar with that. Inflation has been low, which is a positive, but we have additional costs for PPE, cleaning, staffing, and technology. So an 8% cut is going to be much more than an 8% cut for districts and will be catastrophic. So we're really hoping that the revenue estimates come back better in August, and that maybe there's additional federal relief funds, or that the state pulls strings on many of the different resources that they have in order to try and at least keep schools whole as they attempt this monumental task of reopening. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Executive Director of Instruction, Rebekah Hornak, to talk about reopening schools.
Thank you, Scott, for setting me up for a lovely conversation this morning. I think that the individuals in my breakout room had the opportunity to kind of talk a little more in depth, and we were kind of going over the overview. So first off, we're going to talk about the Executive Order 2020-142 that came out on June 30th from our governor and what it means for our schools. We'll cover the Michigan Safe Start Plan and the Return to School Roadmap that was provided. Kind of go over a timeline of what our districts have been working on over the summer, and discuss what our current phase is and what that looks like for our schools. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So the executive order that was provided to districts on June 30th does require every district to have what's referred to as a preparedness plan. As part of that preparedness plan, it requires that districts must have very, very clear safety protocols in place in order to reopen. The plan also requires that districts have very detailed plans for 3 different phases of reopening. And those phases are phase 1 through 3, all combined into one, phase 4, and phase 5. And I'll go over the details of those shortly. Once the district has developed their preparedness plan, it does need to go before their Board of Education for approval. Our districts are currently actually working on that this week and next week in regards to having their plans approved. Then the plan has to be submitted to the state treasurer and MDE no later than August 17th or 7 days prior to the start of the school year. And that's the ISD's responsibility. So once districts approve their plan, they send them to me and I review them, and then I submit them to the State Department on their behalf. Now, along with the executive order that came out on June 30th, the governor provided us a document known as the roadmap. And the roadmap was actually designed by a large council and advisory group that the governor developed. It had educators, business, health, you name it. She had the gamut from rural to urban. She tried to get every demographic possible. She included the Michigan Department of Education. So this roadmap really does take into multiple viewpoints and went through multiple drafts in a very, very short time frame. So in the roadmap, it clarifies what are these phases and what they look like for schools. So when we are in phase 1 through 3, pre-K-12 districts must suspend face-to-face instruction. They cannot provide face-to-face instruction, and what that means is students cannot enter the buildings. We're back to where we were in the spring, but it does look a little different, so I do want to clarify that. Dr. Stewart mentioned things like we had pass-fail and we weren't sure about grading, and there was a lot of concerns this spring. Districts do not have that flexibility going into the fall. We're back to the traditional mindset of grades have to be in place. Courses have to be mastered by students. Teachers have to provide very clear instruction. And so they're currently working on what would that look like in a remote setting. They're providing professional learning for their staff, for example, to make sure that they have all those pieces in place. When we're in phase 4, districts can reopen. They are permitted to reopen to face-to-face instruction. This is the phase we are currently in, so I'll be providing a little bit more detail. But we have to have very explicit safety measures in place in order to do so. Phase 5, districts will reopen with safety measures still in place. Some districts may lighten up a little bit on those safety measures when we're in phase 5, but what I'm seeing from most of our districts in the county is that phase 4 and phase 5 are very similar in regards to those safety protocols. And then phase 6 is what we refer to as pre-pandemic protocols, or what we would normally refer to as the good old days, back when school was functioning as was. Within the roadmap, there are some categories and some very explicit pieces that the districts have to follow. It's broken up into 4 chunks, if you will. Safety protocols, mental and social emotional health, instruction, and operations. Within each one of those categories, there's items that are required by the districts. They don't have a choice. They must have them in place to reopen. There are some items that are strongly recommended. This actually means that they're required unless the district can provide some information in regards to unnecessary hardships that it would create. And then there are a few recommended items as well that are not required, but the committee from the governor felt that they were important enough to mention in the document. So here's the timeline that Saginaw County used to develop these plans that are currently being approved by boards. On June 22nd, the ISD, pulled district representation together from all 12 of our locals and PSAs. We brought together our Saginaw ISD cabinet leadership and had a meeting of the whole. We met with the representation and organized ourselves to prepare for the release of information. We were kind of in recovery phase still from what happened in the spring, and we turned right around and we were getting ready to the fall, literally at the end of June. June 30th, the roadmap and the executive order were released, and we broke into subcommittees, and those subcommittees were around those categories I just shared with you in regards to the roadmap. And we met, and the subcommittees have membership from all of our locals, school districts, the ISD, and our charters or our PSAs. The purpose of those subcommittees was to look at the information within the roadmap, break it down, make sure everybody understood, and provide guidance to the ISD on how we can support locals. What could we do as a team, and what can we have consistency on in the county? We then met with the superintendents from each local school district on July 15th for what was a marathon meeting. We met for about 4 hours, discussing what the information was in the documents, where everybody was headed, what did it look like, where could we have consistency across the county. It really was a true collaborative and networking environment that allowed them to process where their concerns were, to problem solve. We then met with the Saginaw County Health Department on July 16th to go over what their protocols would be for the schools. We then reconvened with the superintendents to finalize some of the consistency details across the county. And now we're kind of in that phase where they're finalizing their plans and they're seeking board approval. And so a number of our districts have board meetings this week, and some were on Tuesday, some were on Wednesday. And so that's kind of the first group to have board approval. And then we're headed into next week with about the other 50% seeking board approval. So current phase, we are currently in phase 4, but we are watching this very closely. Many of us have seen the governor speak on a regular basis in regards to her press conferences. And I will have to tell you, every educator holds their breath every time she speaks, because we never know when she's either going to move us backwards or forwards. It really is a guessing game. And so we're just watching the numbers closely, and we listen to the governor every time she speaks. So under phase 4, our districts are starting to release their plans to the public and what that looks like. And so let's talk about masks first, because I think that's a big question that's hanging out there. According to the roadmap, secondary students, middle school, high school age level students need to wear masks. If they are younger, they do not necessarily have to wear masks unless they are in common areas like cafeterias, hallways, things of that nature. All staff have to wear masks. You will see teachers masked up. They will be wearing masks throughout phase 4 and into phase 5. There are other safety protocols in place that our districts are working on in regards to social distancing, what lunch looks like, in regards to whether or not students will eat in their classrooms or in the cafeteria. So they're working through some of those finalized details before school opens. Personal protection equipment has been a hot topic with our districts, and we're working to make sure that they have everything that they need. We've been working with signage and developing promotional material from the CDC and making sure everybody understands. And you'll actually start seeing a social media campaign on our website soon around the proper way to put a mask on, the proper way to sneeze and cough, making sure you're washing your hands regularly, just to gear up and get parents and students ready for what this environment's going to look like. Busing, we will be providing busing across the county. Buses will run. Students K-12 have to wear masks on buses. They have to use hand sanitizers. Our bus drivers will be wearing masks to ensure that, with the social distancing, and ensure that we aren't mitigating COVID-19. And so they will be spread out as best as they can on the bus. There may be assigned seating on busing. I think one of the big questions that a lot of people have right now are athletics, and where MHSAA sits on the topic of athletics for our schools. And they just released this week, on the 29th, some details about where they're going to be phasing in athletics. And so some of the low risk sports, such as golf and tennis and cross country, they're actually going to begin practice and competition on August 12th. Some of the moderate risk sports, such as soccer and volleyball, there's some challenges with opening up gyms and making sure it's sanitized and appropriate depending on that. But right now, it looks like they're scheduled to begin practice on August 12th, but right now they're delaying competitions until they can work out some of those more details. And then finally, football. Football is considered a high-risk sport, and so right now, they are allowing practice to begin August 10th. but only conditioning, physical training, things of that nature. They're still trying to figure out some competition timelines and whether or not it's going to be delayed. So football, still waiting on some decisions there. That now I know most of you want to get back to watching your students and your children participate in athletics. Their MHSA is working with the governor because right now, in the event that we have volleyball competitions, for example, spectators are not permitted in. And if we do play football, only 100 spectators are allowed into the stadium areas. So they're working with the governor on some of those details. So hopefully we'll get some information shortly. So once we get up and going, our buses are running, our kids are in the classroom, and athletics are being played. What happens when we get a positive case? That's a big question for everybody. There are safety protocols in place. So if a child or a staff member is showing symptoms, all districts have to have a quarantine classroom or location where the child or the student goes until they can be picked up. We have a process in place with the Saginaw Community Health Department in regards to how to handle positive cases within our buildings. We've been working very closely with them, and then the State Health Department Association just released a tool guide kit yesterday for districts to use on how to communicate with parents in the event of a close exposure. And close exposure means that they are within 6 feet and for longer than 15 minutes when we're discussing that. So districts are in a pretty good place with our health departments and are meeting with them regularly for if and when that occurs. Now, when we're talking about phase 4, there's a couple of different pieces around terminology that you may be hearing from your local school district. The first one is face-to-face. Face-to-face means that the students are coming in and they are seeing their teacher face-to-face. It's kind of where our mind goes in regards to school and what school should look like. Virtual. All of our districts in the county are going to provide a virtual option for their families. What this means is it's asynchronous and that it's occurring for the child when it's appropriate for the child, and that they're not talking directly with a live teacher. Distance learning, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but some of us may have taken French through the ITV system. You may have watched a TV while you were in high school and the teacher was clear across at a different district. That's distant learning. Distance learning is when you see the teacher. Today's kids would see them via Zoom, right? Or Google Classroom and Google Hangout. So there's some different pieces there in regards to what it looks like. And finally, the last mode of instruction districts are looking at are what's referred to as blended virtual. Blended virtual is what some of us refer to as the hybrid model. And that hybrid model means sometimes the kids are in school and sometimes they are at home accessing a virtual platform during the school day. So what are our districts doing? That's the big question. As districts are releasing their plans, you will find that all of them are offering a 100% virtual option for families K-12 in the event that the family is not ready to send their child back to school. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. Our districts have all agreed that the ultimate goal is to get kids face-to-face in front of the teacher. We know that is the best model. And that's the direction we want to head in. However, the kids have been out since March. And they're coming into a whole new environment with these safety protocols that are being required. And so what we're recommending and what the majority of our districts are doing are what's known as an alternative schedule, or what I like to refer to as a soft launch or soft start. And it's to get our kiddos reacclimated and our teachers comfortable with the new protocols and the safety protocols. That alternative schedule is going to look different from district to district depending on their demographics and the communities that they serve. And so, for example, you may have one district where half the students go on Monday, half the students go on Tuesday. And when they're not in school, they're accessing a virtual option to continue their learning. You may have some districts where you see that the elementary goes all day, every day, 5 days a week. But the secondary level is hybrid. They're moving back and forth, or they have a reduced schedule. And that really does depend on what the community wanted, as our districts did a lot of conversations with parents and surveys and gathering of information to make the best decision for their families. So right now, our districts are in a phase where they've completed their plans. You'll probably start seeing, if you haven't already, information being shared out on their websites, on Facebook, and they are in the process of submitting those plans to us. Our role throughout this entire process has been to serve our local districts, developing consistency across the county because we believe there's power in numbers. Tools for implementation, we've designed a lot of different tools for them to use as they're heading into an all new world. And finally, we're a communication source. We're trying to help them mitigate some of the miscommunications that may be out there, such as doing a presentation like this on behalf of them so that everybody can hear a common message. We're trying to be as innovative as possible. We're doing a lot of research, creating examples and problem solving for them. And I think the key to this is the districts had a lot of leeway in the spring because of executive orders. And the reality of it is they're coming into the fall underneath the very strict and traditional pieces that are in place in regards to how they count students, how they grade students, and it makes it very difficult to kind of maneuver through that. We have not received a whole lot of guidance in regards to how we could be innovative and restrict some of those pieces that are required in order to access our funding. So we're still kind of on hold. There's a lot of challenges there. We're empowering our districts in assisting them to do what's best for their communities, and we'll be submitting all their plans for them. The districts have been extremely collaborative through this process, through subcommittee work, sharing information and resources, and the superintendent meetings have been very powerful. And it's been a wonderful experience in regards to working with them. And what's made this experience even more unique is that we have a new superintendent who has joined us. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Collier here, and he can kind of express how his first 30 days went under these conditions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeffery Collier. I would be remiss if I did not give a huge shout out to Dr. Stewart. I've shared with her multiple times, and she's a very humble leader. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and she has done an amazing job building the collaborative network of support and quality of excellence that Saginaw ISD School District represents. It's a pleasure to be with you today. It's a pleasure to be partnering with Saginaw County and the Saginaw County Chamber of Commerce. A little bit about me in my 30-second elevator pitch. It was a wonderful introduction at the start of this presentation, and my caps off to the team members who gave you the fantastic update, both Dr. Stewart, Scott Sawyer, and Rebekah Hornak from a very topical review. Even though that may seem immensely full of information for you, please understand that these are complex times and situations, and we are here to provide that information for you. Very briefly, I'm coming to you from a myriad of wonderful opportunities that I'm sure, like you, we never could have drawn out the roadmap to our careers. I grew up, as Heather Gallegos said earlier, as a Hampton Township kid out on the bay shore of Saginaw Bay. I picked more tomatoes, pickles, and melons than you could shake a stick at as a produce farmer during my formative years. I was a bit of a reluctant collegiate student, I suppose, getting into education. And since then, I cannot imagine my world elsewhere. It's funny how we end up in the roles that we were probably always supposed to end up anyway. I've had a wonderful opportunity to have toured the globe a couple of different times with the international experience. I'm married to an educator. My wife, Yolanda, has 22 years of education. She works as an immersion Spanish teacher for Midland Public Schools. I have a daughter, Gianna, who's going to be a freshman this year, and a son, Gabriel, who's transitioning in as a sixth grader this year. We're just moving into the area and still living out of some boxes. Travels have taken me professionally. I've had a wonderful opportunity to have worked in Bay, Aranac, Iosco counties, as well now as Saginaw County. I've also had a wonderful opportunity to have experienced being a professional educator in a charter school setting, a Class D school district at Augrey Sims School District, a Class C district at Tawas Area Schools as a high school principal, a Class B school district as a classroom teacher at Essexville Hampton, a Class A school district at Bay City Public Schools as a middle school assistant principal, and then my experience previously for the last 8 years was superintendent at Augrey Sims, and now coming into an ISD. I have this wonderful panacea of being able to have worked from a public school academy to an ISD now in 4 counties. I am humbled to be with you and continue to look forward to servicing the ISD and moving forward. And I look forward to presenting my story to you for a long run here of a great partnership as we build our relationships together with the Chamber. I wanted to share with you briefly as our meeting moves forward and our presentation comes to a conclusion, short-term goals and long-term vision. And really our short-term goals right now are trying to navigate a situation that we've not dealt with in quite literally a century. And understanding the politicized emotional aspects that are taking place right now, not only with social unrest, but with the pandemic, have made the transition back to school such a unique situation. We relish this opportunity, and I want to promise you that we are not in any way, shape, or form ever going to leverage the health and well-being of our students or our community. These are very diligent, complex, dynamic conversations that are taking place that are being looked at not only to help provide immense opportunities and choice for parents and guardians, for students, but also an opportunity to help mitigate some of the social difficulties of not having students in school and providing opportunities for employment. We realize the difficulties with daycare. We understand that some of our area in the county is in a daycare desert, and we want to be able to provide not only the health and well-being, but the support and services that we believe we provide on a daily basis for our students. So please understand that as we move forward with this highly debatable topic of whether it's best to send students to school, providing the opportunities and choice and respect of parents and guardians' decisions, these are pieces that we are working through and navigating not only delicately, but very diligently with great reflection for what is best for students. I'm very, very proud of the collaborative dynamic that I've been able to walk into, not only with the immensely talented cabinet and support service team here at Saginaw ISD, but the dynamic leadership, and I continue to use that word dynamic because it truly is, I don't have a better synonym, the great instructional leadership and dynamic leadership of Saginaw County superintendents. We are blessed to have the leadership that exists today to be able to support the educational needs of our community. Short-term goals really are focusing on building this plane as we fly it, making sure that we can help navigate the return to school initiatives countywide, design systems of support for our communities during this time of COVID, and then provide embedded services and service. And there really are two different pieces here, making sure that we're providing the support service and the customer service to our locals and trying to share this burden and lead block for them as they move forward for their communities. My long-term vision really sits on a platform of what my belief system is. It's to remain vigilant in supporting and enhancing our vision and mission here at Saginaw ISD to serve, innovate, and empower not only our local school districts and educational community, but really to reframe that idea and hopefully be able to work within community building throughout the county and in the greater region. I look to expand opportunities for students in all phases. Currently, we provide expanded resources for early childhood, career technical education, and early college. We're looking to blow the roof off of those opportunities and provide more is more when feasible and possible with resources and partnerships throughout the community. I look forward to bolstering our communications platform as an extra layer of support and service, not only for our local school districts, but for the community, chamber, county at large, to be able to provide a central hub of communication link that we can help foster and overlay and saturate communication to link for our constituents and services. I also look forward to helping build the, again, I'm going to use this word, dynamic aspect of the excellence of education that takes place here in Saginaw County and throughout the Great Lakes Bay region, to be able to emphasize, celebrate, and champion the great things that are taking place, to provide that opportunity to know the level and caliber of excellence that's taking place. We look forward to continuing to model and lead our diversity and equity initiatives, and we'll look forward to broadening the relationships and partnerships throughout the Great Lakes Bay region. I'm looking forward to starting that first person with you at your leisure as chamber members as well. And again, I'm blessed to be here, honored to be at your service, and looking forward to continuing to serve, innovate, and empower. Thank you very much.
Oh, here we go. Hang on. I had to bring my camera back up. I'm sorry. Wow. Just wow. What an exceptional team we have, not just at the ISD, but it's obvious there's a very strong relationship between the business community through the Chamber of Commerce with our corporate partners and the ISD. We're here to help you and to help get the word out. I'm very excited about your PPE campaign and just informational. And as I said in the chat room, you know, the Chamber wants to partner with you on that so that we can help get the word out. You know, we all know you have to tell people, tell them again, and then tell them again. So the more we can partner and help get good information out quickly to our members and to the community, the better. So we're going to be here as a strong partner for the ISD. I want to thank especially though, Kathy Stewart. Your tenure at the lead of the ISD has been amazing. You've been a calm leader. I've been at forums with you where I was chewing my knuckles and you just have always been so composed and really giving good information. And we certainly welcome Jeff. We're looking forward to working with you. The amount of work the ISD has put in to bring our students back safely, to educate them safely, to feed them, to nurture them, to be social workers, all of that is amazing. I was on an email with Frankenmuth Superintendent just a moment ago, and I said, this team is just amazing. So I'd like to thank all of you, Kathy, Scott, Rebekah Hornak, Jeff, for joining us today. The information that you guys have shared is vitally important to both the economy and the health and well-being of our community as we prepare for the future. Now, to wrap things up, I'd just like to take a moment to once again thanks to our ambassador team. They're just amazing group of volunteers that help us at our events. They help us rehearse for all of these Zoom meetings so that we bring you a quality event, and as leaders in the discussion in the breakout room. So thank you so much to our ambassadors. I also want to take a moment to thank our Chamber Board Chairwoman, Heather Gallegos, for helping me MC today's program. Heather, as you know, communications, global, whatever for Michigan, has been under just a little bit of stress through this. And you know, that and managing her kids and her family, just thank you so much for your dedication to the Chamber and this community. We also want to thank today's sponsors, and we appreciate their support and participation, because without them, we couldn't provide the services and events that bring us together as a community to communicate, connect, and influence our way into a thriving business community. Our next virtual Perc on September 3rd will also be very topical. We're going to take a look at some innovative and productive partnerships that have developed because of the COVID-19. You know, just as an aside, we've had very strong relationships with one another. The leadership in Saginaw County have been on the same page in so many things. And it has put us in a position so that when a crisis like that hits, we can quickly pick up the phone and talk to one another. We don't get in somebody else's lane. And so through that, this, you know, the COVID response has been actually very good in Saginaw County, the information. And so we want to present that to you next month at our Perc. We hope you can join us. We want to thank you again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of this gorgeous day.